And once that happens, what the church decides, we'll all live with. But you can't just take snippets of somebody's sermon somewhere and watch it in a deliberative committee and make a decision and ban somebody. Not when they're an ordained elder and they're an ordained pastor. They either need to be held account for what they're saying because it's genuinely wrong, or they need to be left alone because it's within the sphere of ideas to be discussed.
It's been a sad state of affair. I don't think things will never be the same for the Village SDA Church after the termination of Pastor Van Kelly. Now, Pastor Van Kelly is speaking in this podcast here. I'm going to put a link in the description below so that you can give them the viewership as well. I'm not going to play the entire thing. This is Pure Light Mission. So let's get right into it. So we hear the thoughts of the man. Let's begin at 3 minutes and 56 seconds.
So having said that, I understand that many of us, me included, are saddened by what happened to you. We watched it hoping it was going to turn the other direction, but we know God is in control. And the inevitable happened, and you were asked to step out of the leadership of the church. And I just want us to reflect on that moment. Did you see it coming? And what were your thoughts going on there? What gave you courage to face this storm? And stand faithful during that trying time?
Well, I didn't see it coming. In the last few days before it happened, it was obvious it was going to happen. But I didn't see it coming. The principles that have strengthened and made the Village Church are principles of some pretty rigorous dialogue, which means a lot of maturity and grace is needed because sometimes we don't see things the same way. After it happened, I had a sense of conscious innocence that, while maybe I didn't do everything exactly right in the minds of some, I don't have regrets about how I related to the people I related to. We had some very intense dialogues and disagreements, but I believe they were necessary for the equality of impact that the outcomes were going to create. So God has been very good to me. I don't want to be proud and I don't want to be falsely humble about anything. If we could back up and do some things different, maybe everybody would do some things different. I don't have ill will towards anyone. That doesn't mean that I believe that the right thing happened, but I do believe God sits enthroned above the circle of the earth, and he knows how to work with whatever situations develop in our lives. So I have confidence that we're doing the best we can, and we're going to go forward and see what's next.
Wow. That's all I can say. Wow. Like, you got to think about the grace of God and the testimony of his love on display here. Here is a man who's been maligned, rejected, cast aside, ostracized, made to feel like an evil man. You will think this man will come back with a bitter spirit, proud retaliation, a revengeful spirit. That's not what's going on here, friends. The display of this man's character is what stands out the most. When we can speak about what happened, we know it was wrong. We've publicly called it out here in this channel because it was wrong. It should have not happened. And if it could happen to him, it could happen to any of us. But the way Pastor Van Kelly has responded to all of it is something to watch.
I like that attitude. You don't seem to have ill feelings. How did it? I know to be unjustly treated when due process is not followed is not something pleasant.
No.
And to be falsely accused or misrepresented, especially when you were just about to lead a specific project. I remember you made an announcement of purchasing a property next door, and you're about to set up this medical missionary work and ministry line, just about to take off. And in the middle of that, then this happens.
It kind of comes apart.
So how did you cope? I mean, what did you do? So I know there are some people who are our viewers who also had great projects for God and mission and vision. They even had finances invested, and then they were taken out of key positions that frustrated the project.
Well, it does frustrate the project. So leadership is very central to anything. We have Ezra, we have Nehemiah, we have Joshua, we have Moses. They're not the key. God is the key, but he still does use people.
Yeah.
And those people build relationships and networks, and they develop trust and respect with people. So ideally, a leader does start to prepare a group to know how to go forward in their absence. But leadership is a sacred thing that's a function of a lot of trust building. I'm 61 years old, and in the 35 years or so that I've served the church, we've had some rough moments. Earlier in my life, I did get very bitter through a very challenging situation that we went through. But I think God actually let me go through this as a bit of a chance to keep growing and to test me. Due process does matter, and due process is probably the greatest victim of these last few months. If we're really after the truth, then we do need due process. Even the civil governments know that. And yet, at this phase of my life, I've watched God at work. The prayers of so many people have sustained me. Some of these circumstances are engagements with even people that have been my friends. So, in the midst of all this, exceeding great understanding, wisdom, and largeness of heart is 1 Kings 4:29. That's what God said he gave Solomon. He would give it to him. We have to have largeness of heart to be a leader. Sometimes the challenges come from people you're leading, and sometimes it comes from people that have influence over your life above you. And if God's not bigger than the circumstances you're in, then I guess the people are God's then, aren't they? And then you can be frustrated and upset, but the people are God's then, aren't they? And then you can be frustrated and upset, but God's not caught off guard. I don't know what's going on, but I will say all the prayers of the people have sustained me.
Another thing that I want to highlight here, again, his vulnerability, his willingness to admit to his own failures and flaws is something to behold. I know that there are some people who just can't do that. And I would say there was a time where I couldn't do that. Pride and ego gets in the way of that. You see, righteousness by faith doesn't mean infallibility. It doesn't mean flaws and inconsistencies in the characters. This doesn't mean the man cannot stumble. It doesn't say that. But I think one of the things to behold from Pastor Van Kelly, it is willingness to admit, to publicly share his vulnerability. I try to do that on this channel here as often as I can without giving too much information. When we're wrong, we come back and apologize. We move on, learn from our mistakes, and do better. That's what being a Christian is all about. But he's talking about due process here as well. Due process was the issue that was lacking in the way that the man was treated because of the way he wanted to defend Dr. Conrad Vine, respecting the idea of due process. You cannot just get rid of the man without, right? There's a protocol that the church must go through before we make these decisions. And him being the pastor of Conrad Vine, he did the right thing as well. And again, his character is shining like a bright star right now. That's what I love about this whole discussion. There's some notes for you and I. For those of us who are persecuted, we surrender the matter to God and we let God be our judge.
Prayers.
Yeah. And my local church, my local church was very unitedly in support of me. And after being there 11 years, they know me.
Yeah.
All right. So they know who I really am. You can't hide who you really are for over 11 years. All right.
Yeah.
So since 90% of them were willing to stand up and speak up, my confidence is that, there's some things that are wrong, but God's bigger than all of that, and he'll help us.
Yeah. No, that's a very good attitude to have. And you sound like somebody who's not bitter at the church.
I'm not. Praise God.
Yeah.
I don't want to take credit for that, but I don't feel the sting right now. Like maybe I'll feel it later on. I don't know. Processing grief it comes in phases and waves. And at this point in time, God has spared me from anger and bitterness over it.
This one will be a little bit personal. How's your family coping with this? And what methods are you using to help them adjust to this?
Well, I can tell you it's much harder for my family than it is for me.
I could imagine.
I've got 4 kids, and they're all fairly strong young men and women. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And I will say this: my family is more incensed over what's happened to me than anybody else. And of course, you have a church that knows you for the last 11 years.
Yeah.
Well, I live with my wife. My daughter still lives at home. My mother-in-law lives with us. And these people know who I really am. I'm not perfect. It's been harder on them than it has been on me. But I will say this, when they see me without anger and bitterness, and I can remind them to look to God, He's doing something. He's going to work in spite of it. It helps them.
Yeah. No. I can relate with that because
Amen.
my sister used to work as an accountant in a conference.
Okay.
Because of bad leadership. She was also unfairly dismissed. And it was harder for us as family
Yes.
than her.
It is harder.
And praying and talking about it, and just saying God is in control, no surprises. He always prepares us for the inevitable.
You know, the family was one of my concerns as well. The impact this is having on his children. I know he has a son called David. He has a daughter, I think it's Julia. But anyway, it's just that knowing how they respond to the church, the impact this could have on their faith, it's really concerning. But again, the man is showing tremendous strength and courage. This goes to show that the grace of God, nothing is impossible with the grace of God. I mean, this is an example for many of us who are going through things when we are misunderstood, ostracized, cast aside, hated because of our stance. You know, it's one thing you are persecuted for wickedness, but when you are persecuted for righteousness' sake, it's a whole different ball game. And the leaders in the Michigan conference, they don't have any way to justify their position. Nothing. They don't have any way. Now, people say there's more to the story, this and that. I'm sure of it, there is. But due process wasn't followed. This is where they dropped the ball. Even if they had a good case, the way they went about dealing with this man and the way they went about getting rid of Conrad Vine, it exposes their motives. It exposes everything. So, but again, in the midst of it all, he is keeping his family strong. He's enduring. God is blessing his ministry. Doors are still being open. Yeah, you may not be working for the church now. You may have to go as a self-supportive minister, right? Oh, I forgot. Independent ministry. Anyway, yeah, that's something to behold, something to admire. So let's go to the next point here.
About it, just saying God is in control, no surprises. He always prepares us for the inevitable. So the next point is of the discussion is, as a result of what happened there, there's been a lot of allegations made.
Yeah.
Statements made to the effect that you seem to be defending Dr. Conrad Vine, who is alleged to be promoting separationist ideologies. So you are basically classed with him in that. So you basically, the premises or the allegations are that you are promoting people to leave the organized church and set up underground churches. And, just like the Free Seventh-day Adventists, like, the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, and that is where it's going.
Yeah.
And others who are in those organizations are saying, see, we told you guys, abandon this organizational structure. It's not going to help you to push forward the Lord's work. Yeah. So what is your response to that?
Well, my response is this, is that it doesn't matter if your name's Conrad Vine or Ron Kelly, whatever it is. Everybody has a right to a legitimate examination of what they've said, and they should be held accountable for what they've said. But you can't do that without a proper process. So if Dr. Vine has said something he shouldn't have said, then let us have a bit of a theological gathering, and let's examine what was said. Let's examine it in context. And once that happens, what the church decides, we'll all live with. But you can't just take snippets of somebody's sermon somewhere and watch it in a deliberative committee and make a decision and ban somebody. Not when they're an ordained elder and they're an ordained pastor. They either need to be held account for what they're saying because it's genuinely wrong, or they need to be left alone because it's within the sphere of ideas to be discussed. So as for intentions of separation, Dr. Vine has no intentions for that. I believe his words have been trumped up and taken advantage of. And I think that's grossly unfair to our profession of Christ and to our profession of justice and to our profession of due process.
Yeah.
I would stand up for you or anyone else to have due process the same way I stood up for Dr. Vine. And personally, I believe that that's my job. I'm a shepherd. He happens to be a member of the church where I was pastoring, and it's my job to make sure he's treated fairly. So he can be held accountable for what he said. It just needs to be done in a process to where he has a chance to either say, well, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry I said it. Let me clarify it. Or I wish I would have said it different. If you don't have a due process, then you don't get a chance for redemption or understanding. So I love this church. This church saved me. I came out of a dysfunctional family, backslidden Seventh-day Adventist mother. This church is my family. I'm not giving up on this church. Do I believe they get it right all the time? No. I probably haven't got it right all the time in my 35 years of serving it. But man, my commitment to my family is high, to my wife, my kids, and to my church family right after that. You know, there's a song that says, you'll notice we say brother and sister around here.
Yes.
That's because we're a family and these folks are so dear. And how I feel is God's actually called me to ministry to help people figure out how to solve problems, not just create problems. So I believe in the Bible directive to speak frankly with your brother, don't hold a grudge in your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's Leviticus 19. I believe in Matthew 18 to follow a progression of dialogue. I believe in Proverbs 27 that says, the wounds of a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses, and I believe that iron sharpens iron. Now, some people don't have a commitment to that process, and it's easier to cancel than it is to converse. But that's not how God's people do things, and that's not how you get at the truth. I also don't believe that there's a 29th fundamental belief, which is the infallibility of the church. Okay?
Oh, he's too good, man. He's too good. First of all, we're going to come back to that comment. It's just his willingness to publicly defend Conrad Vine is an integrity that we have to prize and appreciate. He's never thrown Dr. Vine under the bus. Now he's saying he did say Dr. Vine may have said some things that he wished he had said differently, but he's still respecting the practice, right? Due process. Bring him before the church, allow his case to be examined. And we know these processes didn't go through. That's not what they did, right? The way they went about it, it was the heavy hand of the law kind of thing. Total overreach. But again, he still this is what you call integrity. The man still stands for what he believes, despite everything that you heard. He hasn't changed his position. This is the kind of man we need. This is the kind of people we need to be, right? This is the Christ-like mentality that we got to get to the point where my yes is yes, my no is no. It's just what it is. But again, he loves the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Oh, friends, you gotta love your church. And a lot of times, sometimes we speak and we preach, we don't love the church. We don't love the people. We don't. But some of us love this church, friends. We love, I love the fellowship. I love the doctrine. I love their prophecies. I love Ellen White. I love the interpretation of our biblical understanding. I love the way the Adventist church functions. I love the organization. But there are some things that are very problematic. And that's what he's speaking about here. There's no such thing as the infallibility of the church. And we do know when there's error, we need to call it out. And when there's truth, we need to uphold it. We know when there's people, we need to love them all. The sins and the failures and the bad policies must not be tolerated.
I also don't believe that there's a 29th fundamental belief, which is the infallibility of the church. Okay, I sometimes we act like it. But Ellen White didn't believe that either, because at one point in time she said, "Look, even the General Conference is not speaking as the voice of God." Now later she felt like there had been some change, but if she were alive today, what would she say? She required a dependence on the Lord directly. So I love this church. For those that have left it, I would say, stop and rethink this, Yeah, it's going to be hard to keep ourselves together, and it's going to take some difficult dialogues, but I love this church. I'm not doing anything to promote separation or even underground churches. There'll come a time when probably the institution, organization is no longer workable. When that comes, Obviously there's going to be a lot of home churches. Ellen White says we'll be meeting in orchards and fields and caves. We're not there yet.
Yep.
We have a mighty army. Let's try to keep it together and do something.
Yep.
I love it. I love it. This is what I call balance. I have to end this video. This is too good. There's going to be a link in the description below. Go give them the viewership because there's more counsels in this video. It's a 32 minutes video. Friends, you need to see this. Encouraging. Friends, when I'm listening to Pastor Ron Kelly, I cannot help but to think of 1 Peter 2, verse 22, right? So 1 Peter 2, 2. So easy to remember now. And I hope this will help you as much as it has helped him to remain strong. And the way to deal with this, look at it from the perspective of Jesus Christ. In 1 Peter 2, verse 21, right? For to this you have been called. And let me get my King James Version. I like that better. There you go. For hereunto were you called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps. Who did how many sin? No sin. Neither was guile found in his mouth. Keep in mind, the Christians during the time were facing severe persecution under the Roman Empire. That's why Peter wrote to the people in Babylon, he called them, which was direct reference to Rome. But what we are told here, Jesus also suffered and he did nothing wrong. Look what it says next. Who, when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threateneth not, but committeth himself to him that judgeth righteously. There used to be a time when everybody says something about me online. I used to come back and make videos. You guys remember when I used to do that? Give me a 1 in the chat when you remember when I used to do that. Have you noticed I don't do that anymore? I've read the scriptures and I say, you know what? I don't have to defend myself. Now, if I've made a mistake, I've said something wrong, and if I need to correct an error, I come back and do that. If I'm in the wrong, I'll apologize. But to respond to every one of my critics or everybody who make a video about me, or to complain publicly about what I've been facing, and I've been facing stories, I cannot tell you. I do not share things publicly with people. I keep it private. I go on my knees. I speak to my wife about it. I have a few friends we talk to and we pray, and we just leave it alone. I just endure by the grace of God, only by the grace of God. But we are told Jesus, when he was reviled, he did not revile again. He didn't fight back. He let them, do what they did, spat on his face, talking about him in a negative way, used and abused them, slapped them and everything. He just let it happen. When he suffered, he threatened it not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously. I'm going to give it to God. I'm going to give you to God. And this is what Ron Kelly is doing here, man. He's surrendered the matter to the Lord. And the Bible tells us, who his own self bare our sin in his own body on a tree, that we being dead to sins should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes you are healed. Friends, this is an encouragement for those of you who are facing it. And I know some of you are facing it, especially when you take a stand for truth and righteousness. I hope this video encourages you. Be strong. Surrender it to the Lord. You don't have to defend yourself. Let God fight your battle. Let God fight your battle. But don't lose your Christianity in the process. Take a humble, vulnerable position. Leave the matter with God and let him fight for you. And let me tell you something. Pastor Ron Kelly is going to be just fine. And he's been just fine. Doors are open. He's traveling the world. He's preaching the gospel. We're trying to catch him here at Advent Media Connect. I'm going to send him a text tonight. I'm going to say, hey, let's go. Pastor Ron Kelly, you got to come by. Visit us here. Show us some love. Because we can use some of that good counsel. This is a good man. So there's a link in the description below. Let me stop talking here. God bless you. Thank you for listening. And I hope this was an encouragement to you as well. Until next time, have a good one. Bye.